The Gallup organization completed an extensive survey on 1,500 successful Americans some years ago, in which they asked them how they accounted for their great achievements. The reason given by most of them was that they felt that they had higher than average levels of common sense. They defined common sense as the ability to have experiences and to learn from those experiences and to apply what they had learned to subsequent experiences. As a result, they said, they'd become progressively better and eventually leaders in their chosen fields. Common sense was also defined by the people in the study as the ability to cut through the clutter and to see the world as it really was. They felt that they had a far more honest and objective appraisal of reality than the average person did. They didn't fool themselves or delude themselves into wishing and hoping and seeing things that simply weren't there. They didn't ignore the hard facts of life, but rather they incorporated these truths into their worldviews and made their decisions and actions based upon them. Robert Ringer, in his book $1 Million Habits, refers to this as the reality habit. In an earlier session, I called it the law of reality. Jack Welch, the president of General Electric Corporation, a $17 billion conglomerate, says that it's the most important single principle for success in leadership. He also says that in order for you to succeed in any undertaking, you must be willing to see the world as it is, not as you wish it were. Robert Ringer said, "The most successful men and women in America are those who take the time to really understand the facts of the situation and then to act upon them without pretending they don't exist or hoping that they'll go away." One of the finest books written on this entire subject of reality was entitled The Way the World Works by Jude Wanniski, a writer with the Wall Street Journal at the time, and a man who spent many years studying economics in America and around the world before concluding that there were certain immutable laws and principles that repeated themselves over and over again throughout all of human history. Each one of these thinkers and thousands of others have come to virtually the same conclusions about the way that people behave, and their suggestions are all the same. To be successful, you must conform your life and behaviors to the way the world really is and to the way that people really behave, not the way they should behave. Even Abraham Maslow, the great psychologist, said, "The ability to be absolutely honest and objective about life and other people is the mark of the fully mature, self-actualizing human being." In this session, I'm going to talk about the laws of economics. But before you roll your eyes and begin thinking that this is a dry and boring subject, I want to point out that economic behavior is simply the study of human psychology and human action. It's the study of how and why individuals behave as they do, and how the behaviors of large numbers of these individuals, all motivated the same way, create the economic conditions and possibilities that you see around you every day. In its simplest sense, you must know and understand the laws of economics if you wish to achieve financial success in our competitive enterprise economy. The starting point of learning how to make and keep more money is to thoroughly familiarize yourself with the entire subject so that you can anticipate opportunities and avoid economic reversals. An understanding of these laws and principles can give you the winning edge that can enable you to move ahead further and faster than anyone around you. More than anything else, it'll give you a heightened sense of coherence in that you will understand the major events of your world in a way that would escape you if you weren't familiar with these laws. Now, economic laws are merely expressions of human behavior. Just as we said that happiness comes from the satisfaction of needs and that true happiness arises when you reach the point where you're completely content, we know that all human beings, because of an identical psychological structure, act in certain ways under virtually all circumstances to achieve certain goals. These laws and principles apply to men and women, young and old, educated and uneducated, and they cross all the lines of race, culture, and national origin. They explain many things that otherwise might seem inexplicable. The study of these categories of human action takes us deep into the realms of behavioral and cognitive psychology. They explain the price of apples at your local supermarket, as well as the budget deficits of billions of dollars. These laws are so clear, so powerful, and so flexible that you can use them to more accurately interpret your world than perhaps you ever believed possible. I began studying economics myself in 1972. I sent away for books on the subject, and my first readings in economics began with a 900-page textbook. For the next few years, I dedicated hundreds and thousands of hours to reading, studying, writing, and speaking on the subjects of money, prices, labor, political economy, inflation, entrepreneurship, free enterprise, national and international trade, and a variety of other subjects. I lectured and spoke to thousands of people all over the country. Some of my talks were audio taped and transcribed and then reproduced in the thousands. Some of my talks were put on video and then played and replayed on television, where they were seen by many tens of thousands of people. My success in economics, if you want to call it that, has come about because I learned how to cut through the fog of confusion around economic theory and make it both interesting and enjoyable to the average person. More than anything else, people who fully grasped these simple concepts made profound changes in their thinking and behavior that led them on to far higher levels of success and satisfaction in their work and personal lives. The first law of economics can be called the law of ambition. In its simplest terms, it says that every act you engage in is an attempt to improve your conditions in some way. Human beings are goal-driven organisms, and they're always driven toward achieving more of something, although that something may change even from minute to minute. From infancy to old age, you are ambitious. You want to improve your life or some part of your life in some way. If you're earning a certain amount of money, you want to earn more. If you have a certain level of physical health, you want to be even healthier. If you have one home or apartment, you want a larger one. And if you have a larger one, you want a second one somewhere else. If you have a car, you want a larger car. It's normal and natural and completely human for every single person to continually strive to get more and better and faster and newer and cheaper of everything and anything they can think of. The only limitations on human ambition are the limitations imposed either internally by the limitations you place on your own mind, or externally by the limitations imposed upon you by law and society. In the Soviet Union today, we see that 74 years of attempting to create a new type of human being, one who would not be motivated by ambition, has been a total failure. The minute that people saw it was once more possible to fulfill their ambitions, to improve their conditions, there was an outpouring of energy and enthusiasm that swept away the Communist Party so rapidly and abruptly that the whole world stood in wonder. But there's no wonder. It is merely the acting out of individual ambition on a large scale. This brings us to another version of what we call the ABC theory of human behavior. It says that for you to take action, three things are necessary. First, you must be dissatisfied with your existing condition. That's A. Second, you must be aware of a greater satisfaction toward which you can move, and that's C. And third, you must believe that there exists a way, B, for you, by acting, to get from where you are to where you want to go. To restate this, it says that first, in order for you to take action, there must be a state of felt dissatisfaction. You must be unhappy with your current situation. You must want to improve things in some way. The C in this ABC formula is your perception of a greater state of satisfaction. There must be something that you want to have, or a condition that you feel that you can move to that will alleviate your feeling of dissatisfaction, like sitting on a tack and jumping off. The B is your perception of something that you can do, a step that you can take that will get you from A to C. A very simple example would be if you were driving an older car and you saw one of your coworkers driving a brand new car. This could cause you to be dissatisfied with your old car and simultaneously cause you to see that owning a newer car would alleviate this dissatisfaction. It would improve your condition. The A and the C of the ABC formula now exists. The B could be your conclusion that if you worked a little harder and earned a little more money, you'd be able to afford to purchase that newer car. Your heightened level of ambition could then drive you toward a more intense effort that would lead you ultimately to the satisfaction of this particular need. The reverse of this is that where you are dissatisfied and see a state of greater satisfaction, but you don't see how any action of yours will get you there, you'll refrain from acting at all. For example, you may be driving an old car and you're passed on the road by someone driving a $100,000 Rolls-Royce Corniche. You may fantasize and think about how nice it would be to drive such a lovely car, but you can't even begin to imagine earning the kind of money that would enable you to pay $100,000 for a car like that. Therefore, the sight of the Rolls-Royce would not motivate you to take an action of any kind. The A and the C exist, but the B does not. The real difference in levels of ambition is really the difference that exists in levels of desire and belief. If you really believe that you can move from wherever you are to wherever you want to go, you'll be continually compelled to take action to move yourself from A, your state of dissatisfaction, to C, your state of greater satisfaction. This is the difference between learned helplessness and learned optimism. The great majority of people have pretty much the same abilities and talents as have the most successful members in our society. But this majority believes that there's very little that they can do that will enable them to fulfill their ambitions. They feel helpless and powerless. They therefore continue to do what they're doing. Rather than increasing their abilities to accomplish their goals, they merely decrease their wants and desires so that they can be satisfied at a far lower level of accomplishment. The final statement on the law of ambition says that if you're completely contented or if you feel completely helpless, you'll refrain from acting to improve your condition. The only reason that a person does not act to continually improve himself in some way is because he's reached the state of contentment where he feels that no further improvement is either necessary or desirable, or he's reached the state of hopelessness where he doesn't think anything he does will make much of a difference. The danger is that sometimes these are conscious assumptions that you've arrived at by thinking and reasoning, and sometimes these are unconscious assumptions, conclusions that you've arrived at without even realizing that these conclusions have allowed you to go down a mental blind alley. The second law of economics is called the law of minimum effort. It says that you always seek to get the things you want with the least possible expenditure of effort. Because you value your time and your money, your mental and physical energy and your resources, you do everything possible to conserve them. You use your energies sparingly and you spend them as carefully as possible to get the things you want. When we say that we are economic beings, we merely mean that we are economical in our choices. We don't spend more than we have to achieve a particular satisfaction. The first part of the law of minimum effort then says, you cannot consciously choose a harder way to accomplish something if an easier way is available to you to accomplish the same result. You are structured psychologically in such a way that you can't force yourself to select a more difficult path to your goal if you can see an easier path, all things being equal. And everyone is the same way. Even animals are the same way. If you look at a pasture, you'll find that cattle always follow the easiest path to get from one part of the pasture to another. And each subsequent cow follows the same path, wearing a groove in the field, or what we call a cow path. You also have similar grooves worn in your brain, habitual ways of acting which you engage in automatically and unthinkingly because you've simply accepted that this is the easiest way for you to get from one point to another. The second part of this law of minimum effort says that all human beings are inherently lazy in that they follow the path of least resistance in all things. Laziness, then, is normal and natural and inherent in all human action. The lazy tendency in human beings has led to every great advance and breakthrough in the world of human science and technology. Every single forward advance has to be labor-saving in order to be successful. The most affluent countries and the most affluent companies are those who produce the highest quality of goods and services with the minimum possible effort or expenditure of resources. The word lazy is neither positive nor negative. It's not a value judgment. It's only as you demonstrate this quality that it takes on the value of being either good or bad. For example, if you manifest your laziness by continually seeking faster and more efficient ways to get the things you want, it's a good quality. However, if a person manifests their laziness by sitting around on a couch watching television, it's a bad quality. What is the ultimate measure of whether a quality is good or bad? Well, it's simply whether or not the practice of that quality leads to the improvement of the individual's life in the most economical way. If what you do is life-enhancing and life-enriching, and you're lazy in doing it, you're using this natural human quality of laziness in its highest and best sense. The third law of economics is the law of maximization. It says that you always seek to obtain the highest possible return for your expenditure of time, money, or resources. Again, this is just a simple and obvious explanation of human behavior under almost all circumstances. However, it's an extraordinarily important law to be aware of to enable you to avoid confusion in interpreting and understanding the behaviors of other people. The first part of the law of maximization says that when given a choice between more and less, all things being equal, you will always choose more in order to maximize your situation. The second part of this law says that the desire for more is automatic and instinctive and applies to all human desires and fulfillments. In other words, if you're selling something and one person offers you $5 and another person offers you $6, if you're behaving normally, you'll choose to accept the $6 rather than the $5. You will always choose more rather than less. In order for you to accept a lesser amount rather than a greater amount, some other higher value must be at work to determine your behavior. For example, it often happens that when a company is put up for sale, the owners of the company will accept a lower price from one group of investors because that group of investors will promise to protect the jobs and the livelihood of the employees, while the other group of investors offering a higher price will not. But if all things were equal, the amount you will demand from the exchange of your time or money or resources will always be the very most that you can get for the very least that you can give. This desire for more just says that you are inherently greedy, as is everyone else, and greed is neither positive nor negative. It's just a fact. The word greed has been used in politics and economics and religion to describe the behaviors of other people, when in reality it has no value attached to it at all. Every single person is greedy in that they prefer more to less. They are simply greedy for different things. Even Mother Teresa, one of the great humanitarians living today, is greedy in that she has an intense desire to serve the greatest number of people that she possibly can through her Sisters of Charity mission. Parents are greedy for their children and they want the very best for them in life. Athletes are greedy in that they want to achieve the very most in their areas of competition and be paid the very most for doing it. Everyone is greedy. Now, some commentators have taken to calling the 1980s the decade of greed. This is really a silly and meaningless term with a hidden agenda and usually ulterior motives. The fact is that during the 1980s, which has also been called the decade of entrepreneurship, more people seized the opportunity to improve their conditions and to get more in the very fastest and easiest way possible than perhaps had ever happened in any prior period of economic history. More than 20 million new jobs were created, and almost the entirety of American business and industry was reorganized for greater efficiency, effectiveness, and profitability. the only real limitation on people behaving in what is called a greedy manner is the ABC formula. As I stated before, everyone is greedy. Everyone seeks ways to satisfy their greed. The only thing that blocks human action in that direction is that most people don't see how they can get from where they are to where they want to go. But as soon as a person sees a way of achieving his goals and desires, he takes action. When someone calls this an act of greed, preferring more to less, they are simply declaring to others that they don't understand or they don't agree with what's going on. The fourth law of economics is the law of time preference. This law says that because your time is your life and you value your life, you always prefer earlier rather than later in the satisfaction of any desire. To put it another way, people prefer immediate gratification to delayed gratification, and they must be rewarded sometimes substantially to put off gratification at all. The first part of this law is that when given the choice between a reward today or the identical reward at some future time, in the absence of extenuating circumstances, you'll prefer to take the reward now rather than later. If someone says to you, "I'll give you $1,000 today," or "I'll give you $1,000 in 6 months," all things being equal, when would you prefer to have the $1,000? The answer is obvious. If you have the choice, you'll take it now rather than later. Why? It's worth more now because you can enjoy what that $1,000 can mean to you earlier rather than later. Because of the law of time preference, you need to be rewarded for delaying gratification. You need to be compensated in some way to a greater degree in the future if you're willing to put off enjoying the reward today. For example, interest rates are merely rewards for delaying the expenditure of money today into some future period. If you could spend $1 today or spend $1 in 1 year, in order for you to wait for 1 year, you will want to be rewarded with even greater spending power or power to buy yourself the satisfactions you desire a year from today. All interest rates are merely rewards for waiting. Over all of recorded economic history, the average interest rate required for a person to wait is about 3 to 4% per year. But when interest rates are higher than 3%, the extra amount reflects the inflation that might take place, the taxes that might be taken off the interest payment, and the degree of risk involved in getting your money back at all. If any one of those three factors, or more than one of those factors, is high, the amount of interest that you will require to delay gratification from the present to the future will be higher still. This is why in some countries with high inflation rates, it's quite common for them to offer interest rates of 20% and 30% and even 40% per month. These are merely rewards for delaying gratification and are based on the law of time preference. The second part of this law simply says that you are inherently impatient in the achievement of your goals, and this tendency toward impatience is neither good nor bad. Because you value your life, you value your time and the various pleasures and gratifications there are for you to enjoy with that time. For this reason, you are always more eager to enjoy these satisfactions now as opposed to waiting. You are naturally impatient in that whatever you want it immediately. It takes self-mastery, self-control, and self-discipline to restrain your appetites and delay gratification to a later period because it may be much better and more rewarding to do so. In children, for example, who lack these developed qualities of constraint, you'll see a very high degree of impatience. They want everything immediately. It's been said that today even immediate gratification is not fast enough. The fifth law of economics is the law of vanity, as applied to economics. It says that you are egotistical and self-centered, and you place a high value on your appearance, your opinions, your choices, your relationships, and the way you're treated by others. This law says that each person is ego-centered and vain. Each person is extremely concerned about how he or she is perceived by others, and much of your personality is determined by the way you think others see you and think about you. The fact of vanity and the role of the ego in human behavior is not even open to question. The entire fashion industry, automotive industry, jewelry industry, furniture industry, clothing industry, and many other industries are all built around appealing to the individual's desire to look good to others. In fact, many of the great fortunes in America have been based on finding a unique and original appeal to vanity with a product or service that can be sold to large numbers of people. The sixth law of economics is the law of ignorance, which says that every act you engage in is characterized by a certain degree of uncertainty with regard to the outcome, because you can never know everything there is to know about anything. This law simply says that we're all ignorant to a certain degree and that no one can know everything there is to know about even the smallest subject. Because we're ignorant, we can't predict with exact certainty what's likely to happen. We don't even know for sure whether we'll drive to and from work on a given day without getting into an accident. There are laws of statistics and laws of probability that show if we do certain things like following the traffic laws carefully and wearing seat belts and driving at a particular distance behind another car, we can improve the odds of our arriving at home or work safely, but there's still no certainty. Ignorance is everywhere and all around us. Everyone is ignorant. Most people are incredibly ignorant of an enormous number of subjects, just like you and me. In fact, our areas of knowledge are very small compared to our areas of ignorance. This is why anyone who purports to predict how economic events are going to turn out is really engaging in a form of guesswork. No one can know because of the uncertainty principle. Someone once said, nature is always on the side of the hidden flaw. One of Murphy's laws is that whatever can possibly go wrong will go wrong. Unpredictability and uncertainty lead inevitably to the fact that we are all ignorant to a greater or lesser degree.